Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Welcome, everybody, to the next chapter with Charlie. My very special guest today, Gina Economopoulos, currently serves as an end-of-life doula. Gina's path has not been a straight line. That's why she's on the show. She's got something interesting to say. So she's a recovered alcoholic who also served 12 years as a nun in a Franciscan convent. Gina offers words of hope and resilience, and that's why we have titled the show Never Give Up on Life, because Gina believes in never giving up on life. Her very presence is a testament to the power of the human spirit to persevere. Her story reminds us that hope can be discovered even in our darkest moments, and I guarantee it will leave you inspired. With that, let's get Gina on the show. Gina Economopoulos, welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. It is good to be here, and to all your listeners, what a blessing and what a gift.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Can you believe we get to do this? We get to talk to people. It's really just you and I talking, but we have people listening.
Yeah. To be honest with you, about 5 years ago, I never thought I would be a guest on your show. I mean, especially 30 years ago. And it is important, on these shows, and it just helps me, and hopefully it helps others, that you're not alone, and that there are ways to live a full life each
Lots
day.
of ways to live a full life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I feel honored. I've been doing the show probably between 8 and 10 years. I don't keep accurate count on the show, but 8 and 10 years. You are as I look at my number, I think you are number 386.
Wow.
But it's still, it's nothing compared to the big time people who do thousands of shows, but I'm going to take close to 400.
Well, you know what, Charlie? You're a big time person, right? Just doing one is something great.
How
Right?
kind of you. No wonder. That's great. So,
And that's what I've learned. You never compare yourself. You're right where you're supposed to be, and it's better than where we were yesterday.
yeah. And it always is, because if it doesn't feel better, it's the process of getting there. Sometimes feeling bad or, having troubles is a process to get into that space in life. Like we're both alcoholics. But,
Yes.
Alcoholism truly, as I talked to you, listen to my interview with Rhonda Britton, and we talked about this, and she's an alcoholic as well. Is that how did your alcoholism, it's a strange question, but how did your alcoholism serve you? And there is a thing where I wouldn't be who I am today without alcoholism.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And as we all know, we all have our different journeys, our different stories. When
Right.
you listen to other alcoholics in recovery, and I mean, you're like, well, I wasn't in prison. I wasn't like that. But then yet we all have that common denominator of a disease that's so cunning, baffling, insidious, and that we all have the same, those feelings of inadequacy, feelings of not belonging. But yet, to be honest with you, Charlie, and to all your whole audience, I didn't realize I was an alcoholic until 10 years ago. I'm a slow learner. It wasn't
really?
like, in hindsight, where my eyes are open, my heart is open. In hindsight, the disease was there. In hindsight, the alcohol was like my best friend. I ran to it in a way, but then yet I ran away. I ran away from life. I was a runner.
It.
I was a runner. So
Yeah.
I was a denier. I know, not me. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm Gina. I'm Gina Economopoulos. Don't you know who I am? I can't be an alcoholic. I was a nun. I was a Catholic nun for 12 years. How can a Catholic nun be an alcoholic? Not me, not me. I was this little cutesy person, whether growing up as a nun, everyone loved me. But it took a while. It took through a lot of pain and suffering for myself and going to a real dark space that it, one day I was like, oh my God, that's my answer to all my problems of my life, of not accepting things in life and realizing, oh, I am an alcoholic. Alcohol was my best friend without me realizing it.
You know what I've said frequently about alcoholism is that I didn't drink to get high. I drank to get normal. It quieted my demons. It was a silencer for my demons, and for like a couple of glasses of wine, it really worked. If that's all I drank was a couple of glasses of wine, I'd be a couple of glasses of wine drinker because it quieted the demons. But unfortunately, I said if I feel this good after 2 glasses, how am I going to feel after 10 or 15 or whatever? Because as alcoholics, there is no limit.
No. And like they say, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. When I say, "Oh, I can only have one," yeah, I can have one, like you said. Then all of a sudden, two and three, and next minute. But yeah, it was really shocking to me because I was very shocked to say that I was an alcoholic. I drank in the past or throughout my life to run away from my problems. I had such
Exactly.
pain. I had pain inside me, like I that insecurity, and I thought the alcohol could secure me. I was like insecure among friends and out in the world, and so. But if I drink, I'm not this shy person anymore. I'm like, oh yeah, everyone, because I was seeking for that love and that acceptance. And so having some alcohol within me and always thinking about alcohol, like, yeah, yeah, can't wait to get my next drink. I thought that was normal. I really thought that was like a normal thing to think. I don't, it's, as we listen to each other's stories and even in my story, like I said, I'm not like this fall down drunk. I'm not like, I didn't go to jail. I visited many people in jail, but I didn't go to jail. I never got a DUI, and yet, all these yets that I never did. But yet, for me, it was for me, it was, I fell in love with an alcoholic. After I left the convent, like 2 years later, I met an alcoholic. His name was Danny. I fell in love with one.
Oh, so you
I
started
didn't,
drinking after the convent?
no, no, I was drinking beforehand. I was drinking in college. My first drink was
Oh,
8
okay.
years
Okay.
old.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That was
But
kind of okay.
yeah, but yet I didn't really meet an alcoholic or until I met Danny, because I grew up in a great family. We didn't have alcoholism in the family. My parents were loving, unconditional. 8 kids, one of 8 kids. Went to college, and of course, in college, that's where the
That's what you
alcohol
do.
was. Yeah, that's what I did. But
That's
yet,
what everybody does. Yeah.
that's what everybody does. But for some reason, everybody, the next day would study. But not Gina. The next day, okay, I'm not going to the bar. Not Gina. Yeah, I mean, I just was like, yeah, I'll bring my books to the bar and drink. Why not? That's the thing to do. And even back then, when I was in college, at the end of my senior year, friends of mine said to me that you're an alcohol, I think you're an alcoholic. I said, no, not me, not Gina. I just like to have fun and drink. And that was my motto. And so I could have used the rooms of AA back then in the 80s, but it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. And so as throughout my journey, whenever I was in a dark place, I would drink. My mom died when I was 23 years old, died of cancer. I just graduated from college. And I was a bartender. I forgot to tell you that, Charlie. I was a bartender, so I'm around alcohol because I thought and I wanted to be a professional bartender. but yet, through my mom's death, I was searching. I'm a searcher. So I was searching for that meaning of life, the purpose of life. And I came back to my
Mhm.
Catholic roots. And so I went from bartending, drinking, and living that kind of life to the other extreme, like a conversion of St. Paul. Like, oh, I got hit over the head, like I'm a Jesus lover, and I always say I got knocked off the bar stool. Say, there's a light, and then in that I went right into the convent. I was
I want
just
to hear all about the convent, and we're going to spend
okay.
time about that because I really want to talk about Franciscans. You and I,
Yes.
you are Franciscan, and I have a love affair with the Franciscans. But before that, I want to talk about what you're doing now. And I want you to, that you are an end of life doula.
Yes.
And I spent a few years ago, I have a friend who also works as a deaf doula. And he just, he's made a business of it. That's what he does. And I'm just, he's the right personality. He's caring, loving, he's a wonderful person. And I just fell in love with that role. I did not, I did not completely understand that role. And I think it's such a vital vocation. Would you tell us more about what an end of life doula does?
Yes. End
When
of
do you
life
come
doula.
in? Let's
I
start that. When do you come into their life?
when I get that call, when I get that, it all depends. There's no rhyme or there's no right way or wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
People may call me and say, "Hey, my someone in my family is dying. Could you come over?" I go and check it out. Okay, and I'm not God. I mean, I may think, okay, the person's going to die tomorrow, but who knows? Could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. So I always leave it in God's hands, and I always do
But it's very
what
close. You're close to death at this
close.
point.
You're close to death, of course. I'm aware of the signs of when the physical body shuts down. So if I become aware of that, I could let the family know. It could be a couple of days, but of course there's nurses involved, whether it's a
Yes,
hospice
yes.
nurse and they're involved. They're the medical. I'm not the medical. I'm there just to support them, to bring comfort, to bring peace, not only to the person who is dying, but to the families. And not
I
many
bet
people
that
want
may
to.
be even that may be just as critical, or perhaps even more critical, is a piece to the family than. Of course, I don't want to ignore the dying person, but the impact on the family is humongous.
It is because it's such a challenging time, and it's a bittersweet time too. Someone you love is dying, going to heaven, going to wherever they believe in. They're never going to see them again, and but yet, uh, and it is that but yet at the same time, for me, it's such a gift to be present with them and for them, especially those who are dying. I mean, if I happen to be by their bedside, it's like, wow, what a gift. If I'm not by their bedside, wow, what a gift, because they're on my hearts to pray for. Because I know my heart of my faith where they're going. They're going to a peaceful place. They're going to a place where they're called to go home to the real home, to eternity, whatever. But whatever they picture it or see it, that's where they're going. I never force my belief on them. I just listen to them. I'm there to pray with them if they want me to pray. If they don't want me to do anything, I don't do anything in so many ways. It's sort of like I personally, as an end of life doula, anytime I go into a situation like this, I have to pray and know that I'm spiritually fit to walk in, because it's not about me and it's not about what I think they would need or what I think they would want. It's about me listening, being compassionate, just listening and going for, like, what do you need? What do you need at this time? How do you feel today? And and so it just it you know the people, it's always different. It's always different. There's no set rules or set, like, you got to do A, do B, do C for myself. And it's a passion, Charlie. It's a passion for me to be with anyone dying, whether they ask me to be an end of life doula with them or not. I just love it. I just love it. And not many people may understand that. I know it's a gift. I know it's a total gift from God for me. Because when my mom died back in 1992, that was my first bedside being with someone who was dying. She was diagnosed with cancer. I was 23 years old. I didn't have any faith, no hope, no love, and no God. My experience was pure hell because she was my mom. I took care of her. How can she leave me? How can God do this? Granted, I was raised Catholic, but how can this happen? And now fast forward, when getting into like a conversion and knowing Jesus and the resurrection, I was like, oh my God, now Mom, I know where you're at. And that seed, as I was a nun, grew because I was with many people dying. Not as an end of life doula, just somebody as a sister, because to be honest, I never heard of that word until like 3 years ago when somebody had said to me, you could be an end of life doula, because I would talk about, I love being with the dying, call me anytime, like that. And I was like, really? I said, what is that? I had no idea. And they shared with me, you mean I could do this
was
as a
there an
service?
education? Was there an education? Did you go through classes or you?
Yes, I did. I online, it was during COVID time, so I was able to find someone out of Texas to do this course, and then I had someone local to help me go through it. But I knew it all. Not that I don't want to say, I was very comfortable with it all.
You were
The
home
only
with it.
thing
Yeah.
yes, and the only thing I would say, not that I'm not comfortable, not that I'm not comfortable, that is like the paperwork, the at the end of their life, do they want this? And there's certain things I don't know the logistic part, but I know being there with my heart being there as they take their
Yeah,
last
that's not
breath
your
away.
role to handle that. That's there's other people that are professionals
Yes.
that's what they do.
Yeah.
Your role is to be a lover.
Yes, a compassioner, and just yeah, it just brings just knowing somebody's going to see their God in a whatever, it's like wow. I mean, not that
You
I
know
want
what
to
thought
die today, but it's like wow, paradise for
you know what
me.
thought occurred to me? Um, I was my Christian. I was not in the Christian community until I was 30 years old, um, and I went to seminary 2 years after my introduction to Jesus. And so I was at a very conservative Christianary. How about that? At seminary. And as my listeners know, I attended this seminary with a redundant name, Western Conservative Baptist. They couldn't be just Baptist. They had to be Conservative Baptist, whatever that meant. But they have a very definite understanding of heaven and hell. And who gets, there's the innies and the outies. And I just never bought that, Gina. I did not graduate. I did not walk in a Baptist. I did not leave a Baptist. It was a wonderful education. It was incredible education. I wouldn't replace it with anything because it gave me really solid foundation. But there's so much I disagreed with. And I happen to be of more of what's called theologically of the universalist persuasion. And I believe the resurrection of Jesus includes everybody in the world. It's that you don't have to proclaim the four spiritual laws and do all the rules to be accepted into Christianity. For Jesus to accept you, you may have to do certain things to accept Jesus, but Jesus accepts you as a human being. How, do you
Yeah.
agree with that, or is that too wild for you?
No, it's not. I hear what you're saying, and I don't. When I have to say, when I being a Catholic nun, of course, I was down that road. in a sense of my vision. Like, oh, you got to do this, do this, do this, or you're going to hell, in that kind of way. I
Yeah,
was like on
that's
that.
always the deal, isn't it? It's like not
Yeah,
about. I mean, the ultimate thing is hell or heaven. That's the ultimate thing that drives
exactly.
Christianity, and to me,
Mm.
that's crazy, Gina. That's crazy
It,
because it is love that drives Christianity. Read
I,
the Bible for crying out loud. It's not heaven and
yeah,
hell that runs the
it's
Bible. It's love that runs
yeah.
the Bible.
And and I do see that. And now fast forward, being out of the sisterhood, being out of the nun, and not to say I was brainwashed, but that's where I was at the time.
Of course, of
uh
course.
and I do believe in the Catholic faith and all that and everything like that, but yet I do have an open mind for everything else, for other things. I do have an open mind because I know there are, the Christians say, like you said, you're going to hell, you got to be baptized, whatever, or know Jesus. Jesus is your Lord and Savior, which Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I have
Agreed.
no doubt in my mind that Jesus
Yep,
is my Lord and Savior.
yep.
Do I go to a community church? Do I do this church? Do I tell everyone this? No, I know in the depth of my mind and in my heart that Jesus is, I mean, I was in such hell in this life that now I'm in heaven in this life. You know what I'm saying? Because when I said earlier I have no faith, no hope, no God, and no love, that was hell for me. Now fast forward, I have God in my life. I have love, I have hope, and I have faith. And everything
Kind
else
of like
is
what
sort
St.
of
Paul said were the three most important things.
things. Exactly. And now when I'm with people or of different denominations, and if when somebody dies, someone may say you can't, whatever. I say the mercy of God. God is there. I mean, who am I to say
Right.
when they have their last breath or how they're living what's in their heart? Who am I to say that? Oh, they didn't know
And even
Jesus.
more
I
important, Gina, what is in God's heart toward this person?
exactly,
It's like about this person, but it goes beyond that. It goes to God. What is in God's heart toward this person?
exactly. And so I totally, because I've been at many bedsides where they didn't believe in God or whatever, or angry. And at the moment, there's peace. Heaven came. So I mean, who am I? I'm not just, I was like, wow, they
Oh, really?
whatever.
You see things that the rest of us don't get to see
I not see, I
or
experience. I have
experience.
yes,
Experience, yeah.
experience. I don't see. I'm not a vision per. I don't. I'm not one of those visionaries.
Sure,
But
sure.
yet, but there are times I do. There's gifts, and I'm like, I know when it's from God is when I get the chills that goes through my body, like, oh wow, did that really happen? and but I do. I truly believe we're all God's children. We all have a story. He unfolds that story, and when we have our last breath, it's between that soul and God.
Yep,
And who
yep.
am I? Like you said, I mean, God's love, but who am I to say? Because there were so many stories that I know that were people that didn't live a great life, but then yet even they became a saint. There's a Franciscan became a saint, right? He was like one of those town drunk, homeless guy in this little city, and I believe in Italy years, I'm going back 100 years ago, and everyone's like, oh, and then when he died, they didn't want nothing to do with him. And then he appeared to someone to say, no, God loves me, something to that effect. There is a real story, I think it was St. Joseph of Labouré. Um, and it was just like, and he became a great saint. I mean, you never know. We don't know. We don't know. God, God is so all loving, all powerful. He's there with us. He's there every breath we take, every moment we make. He's always with us.
I love that. And I so agree. I just, we're so much on the same page. Now I want to make another pivot, and you've been referring to the convent a bit, and I hang out. As a matter of fact, next week, I will be 3 days at a monastery with a bunch of monks. I go once a month for 3 days, and I go to a Benedictine monastery, or it's an abbey. I go to a Benedictine abbey, and I pray I pray the offices of Saint Benedict, which
Vespers,
many
yep.
many traditions still do, the offices that were set up by Saint Benedict in what, like 600 or 700, something like that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do I have my dates right? Um, and then I also do spiritual direction with the abbot. And so I spend an hour with the abbot, and we just, and I'd like to, and he doesn't have this list of saying, Charlie, you need to do this. It's just two guys BSing about life in God. And but coming from the position of an abbot, coming from the framework of an abbot, I learned so much from Abbot Damien. He's become a dear friend, a cool guy, and it's just a wonderful experience. So I have lots of familiarity with monks, but not with nuns. I don't know, I really don't know any nuns. One, but she's, I don't get a lot. I haven't talked to her a lot about what goes on in a convent. Tell me what goes on in a convent. What do you do?
Well, I as you had shared, I was a Franciscan nun in the South Bronx. So, as being a Franciscan, being in the convent, I joined a community that was on the traditional conservative side.
Okay.
So, which meant that I wore a full habit. We lived a life of poverty, chastity, obedience, which meant I had lived a true life of poverty, which meant I slept on the bed. I had a bed board to sleep on. We didn't have a
No,
mattress. We didn't
no
have
mattress.
couches.
You told me
No,
that. I'd never heard of that.
yes, we lived an austere life. We were living as close to Saint Francis. If you know the story of Saint Francis, where he gave up everything, he was a rich son of a merchant, and he gave up everything because he found God. He got knocked off the horse, so to speak. But anyhow, he found God, and he just started this order. He's because he was inspired by God, and in that it was like living a very simple, austere life. And that was back in the 1500s, and now coming here, or the
1200s.
1400s,
1200s.
1200s. You're right,
Yeah.
1288. Yes, sorry about that. It was 12. I'm thinking of Saint Teresa of Avila,
Yeah,
but that's
she's
another
1500s. Yeah, we're
Martinez.
both
Like
into
I was thinking of,
Teresa.
yeah, I was like, well, but anyhow, 12. Yeah, it was in the 1200s. So this community I joined was trying. It was friars too, friars and priests as well as sisters. They were trying to live as close to St. Francis back then, which mean, like I said, we didn't, our convents was very austere. We wood, whatever, like in our room, we didn't have, we didn't have anything except for a cross and a statue of our Blessed Mother, because we had a great love for Our Lady. Our Lady of Guadalupe was our patron mother of our order. So, and since, as you know, with St. Francis, he lived poorly. He didn't have
Right.
anything. So our life was not only poorly, but we lived among the poor. So we lived in the South Bronx, in the projects mostly, and that's who we served. We served the poor. We helped them out, whether it's material stuff, spiritual stuff, help in any kind of way. We were there. We were like hands on. But our normal days, you wake up, you pray. So we get that prayer time in the morning, have mass, and then we may do our apostolico, which means maybe give food to the poor or something. And then you come back to pray again at 12 o'clock. You probably have experienced this at the monastery you go to.
Yeah, we do
And then
mass at noon. We do mass.
yeah, mass. And then you do something, and like in the afternoon, there's something that you may have to, you do, whether it could be studying. in the first two, the first year you're a postulant, the next 2 years you're a novitiate. So one year you're studying the Catholic Catechism, the church, you're studying St. Francis, you're studying whatever doctrine, that we need to know, to learn. So it would be a year of studying like that. And then we always come back to pray at, in the evening. We do Vespers, we do the office 5 times a day.
You do Compline
of
after Vespers?
Yes, Vespers Compline we do before we go to bed. We pray the rosary and then we do Compline.
That's my favorite service is Compline. I love that service before bed. It's a short service. It's like only 15 to 20 minutes, and it's just it's just a beautiful service. I love Compline.
Yeah. And then after that, after Compline, it's, as you know, it's silence until the next morning. It's like And people say, how could you do this? Like, oh, why do they do that? There's a reason. After silence, you quiet your mind. You're looking at yourself. You're praying. You could go to sleep. You could read whatever. And a vocation to doing this, like as a sister or as a friar or as a monk, it's a grace. It's a supernatural grace. It's not a human grace, because for us humans, all humans, we have that desire to get married and have kids. That's our natural. Yes, what are you going to do? And then when somebody is discerning if God is calling them because you're giving up everything, totally everything, then that's like a supernatural grace. That's God's giving you that grace to continue. And He gave me that grace for 12 years. But during at the end of those last maybe 5 years, I just went through a lot of hardship, a lot of pain and suffering. I was mistreated because it was a new order. It was a new order. The superior, she was sick herself. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just dysfunctional. Like in hindsight, I see when I joined, it was very dysfunctional. But me, I'm here just searching for something, searching for that peace and love. I'm in my own little world. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll be a sister like this and that. And I mean, my faith was immature, but it is what it was. But during that time, like I said, and like I made final vows. I mean, I gave everything up, had a wedding. I married God, I married the church, I married the community, and I married the people I served. There was about 600 people at my service, at my mass, my profession, final vows. Yeah. I had them from all walks of life because everybody loved me. I'm talking about like we had the homeless, we had this. I mean, everyone that I have served, oh yeah, sister. They're so excited to be there. And I was very moved and touched. I mean, those were the good moments in my life back then. But then yet, the sisters, I don't know exactly, but there was a lot of hardship, a lot of, I was trying to, I guess my spirit was more of on a free spirit, and they were more like, we got to do this, do this, like this, like a cookie cutter. And I didn't fit into their cookie cutter. So at the end of my last 2 years of my of being in the religious life, I was sent away. I was here. I was ostracized. I was this, until it came to a point where they said, here I tried everything, because Charlie, as you know, in any kind of relationship, especially marriage, if they're having a hard time, they go for counseling. We work it out. Let's do this. Let's try this out. And I was in final vows. So I'm thinking, well, God called me this for the rest of my life. How could He have me go through all this? So I did. I went away. I went for counseling. I did all this, growth. And I was like, oh, okay, I found some peace. Okay, I'm going to live in this community. But they weren't responded. They treated me like crap. I mean, hate to say it, but that's what, that's how it was.
That's not right.
Then.
That's wrong. That breaks the whole function of an order.
Yeah, they were dysfunctional. It was too bad, because then they said to me, you don't belong here anymore. All along they said I belonged there, and then I had left. I left like back in 2008. So I was there for about 12 years, put my blood, sweat, and tears into the convent, into the people, because I do have a compassionate heart. I love to serve. And then it left me in a quandary saying, God, why is this happening to me? I'm in a religious order, and this order is very well known. So I'm like, oh my God, how could this happen? I was going, like, it just was really, it was like another, went to in a dark place, God, are you still there? And at that time, I didn't give up on God, because I said, okay, God, I'll just keep moving. I'll keep moving. And I
Good.
did.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. And then,
You know,
yeah.
you know what I'm curious about, and I have this pet peeve with America, among my many pet peeves of America, and that happens to be around St. Francis. I consider, we just had last Sunday in our church, I don't know if it's every church, but in an Episcopal church, we had St. Francis Day. And St. Francis Day, I think, represents a complete misunderstanding of who St. Francis is. And because St. Francis Day, everybody brings in their pets, and their pets get blessed in the name of St. Francis, and that St. Francis was the animal lover. And, and he was. See, that's it. It's not a lie. Not that he wasn't that. He absolutely was that. But in my understanding of St. Francis, I think there is something quite larger. And I think, I read something, I'm reading sort of a biography, sort of biographical, sort of, by Richard Rorge, titled Eager to Love. And it's the theology of St. Francis. And he said, St. Francis believed that Franciscans are to be the gospel, not proclaim the gospel. Ergo, the famous words, preach the gospel at all times, and if you have to, use words. But it really was not about the life of St. Francis. Tell me, you had some very interesting things to say about St. Francis. Tell me about the other St. Francis, the animal lover, yes, but so much more.
Oh yes, when you were talking about that, and I believe it's in all the churches today, and everyone's like, "Oh, I got to bring my goldfish to get blessed." No, I'm just kidding, but I don't know.
Oh,
But to me,
they
I
would,
know
believe me.
they would. And they think the world today sees as Saint Francis. I mean, what's Saint Francis? Everybody knows, like every church, every person knows,
Everybody knows St. Francis.
because
Yeah.
of the animal lover. I mean, granted, he was Catholic and everything, but the church knows that he was the animal lover. And I believe it's because of the story when he was in the town of the Wolf of Gubbio. That's a story, if you want to look up, where the wolf was vicious, but he embraced the wolf. The wolf became tamed, and I was like, wow, that's St. Francis. So, but so the way I believe is with St. Francis, it's like a fluffy St. Francis, like, oh,
Yes,
he's
yes.
like a fluffy. But we never consider. I mean, yes, we've heard, but as a Franciscan in the community, and I believe it go. I mean, it probably still does. Is that we looked at St. Francis as like a disciple of Jesus, as a suffering servant, because Jesus, I mean, Francis loved the animals, but he loved the cross. He suffered. And in his suffering, like in a sense, he didn't preach the gospel, he was being the gospel. And what's the most important part of the gospel with Jesus? It was his carrying the cross and the crucifixion. He actually lived it, because in the last 2 years of his life, he received the stigmatas of Jesus. So they had to carry him because he couldn't walk. He was in so much pain towards the
I had
end
never
when he
heard that he
died.
couldn't walk. I knew he had this stigmata, but I never heard that. I wasn't aware of
There,
that. Not familiar
at
with
the
that.
end, maybe at the end, they had to carry him. They had to carry him, and all he did it for the love of God, for the love of God. I'm doing the, yeah, and yes, and in that he performed miracles. And it's like you said, he did preach, but he truly lived it. He lived the gospel. God was working through him. Jesus was living through him. He was the one. Yeah, there is that scripture where, I died and Christ is living through me. Yeah, and that's
Right. St.
exactly
Paul. Yeah.
that's St. Paul, and that's the ultimate that we're all called to do. But yet, Francis got all the, he was just a special grace guy that God gave it to him, and so, and I also share. He loved death. He had that song, the Canticle Sister Death. You got to look that one up too.
Oh, I'm not
He
familiar
would,
with that.
yeah, he would hold the skull. Like there'd be a picture with the cross with him holding the skull, like just welcoming Sister Death, just welcoming, because he knows that he's going to be with Jesus. And yeah, St. Francis has so many beautiful stories to contribute. And I just share this last one when you had said that he's not the he walks the talk, in a sense, right? He walks the scriptures. He does his preaching, but he walks. And there was one time, one of him and his companion, one of his followers, was like, "Oh, St. Francis, let's go through this town, and let's go preach and everything." And St. Francis and this guy walked through the town, but without saying a word. And the guy was disappointed. "How come we didn't say a word?" He goes, "We did. Our not saying a word was louder than anything." Because here's because sometimes we think we need to preach and share, like, "Oh yeah, Jesus, whatever." But there was a story where he walked into this town with one of his disciples who was on fire, but they didn't say a word, just walked through. And he says, "We just preached the gospel. We just walked through the gospel." So yes, he is the man of scriptures, St. Francis, I would say.
He is it not true, what I've read is that Francis' goal was to genuinely imitate the life of Christ.
Yes.
And all throughout the New Testament, especially St. Paul, is to imitate Christ, is to be Christ. And St. Francis wanted to be Jesus. He didn't want to be Jesus. He wanted to be the model of
Yeah.
Jesus on earth to
Yeah.
show other people. So it was in demonstration. It wasn't in words. It wasn't in fancy preaching. Although, you read some of the things Francis wrote, they were beautiful. And so, it wasn't that he was incapable of using words. He just didn't see that as important. And that's why you slept on wooden planks, is because Jesus slept on the ground. Jesus didn't have a
Yeah.
home. Jesus,
Yeah.
someone says, can I be one of your followers? And Jesus said, only if you don't want to have a home and you want to sleep out in the dirt and hang out and follow me, then come along, join us.
Yeah.
But don't be
And
expecting a lush life.
the greatest Jesus would says to all, pick up your cross and follow me.
And follow
And
me.
Saint Francis was a prime example of picking up his cross, where he received the stigmatas, as well as Padre Pio. We'll know when we get to heaven why they were chosen. Thank God it's not me, because I don't like paint in my hands,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they had the grace to carry it.
My favorite theologian is Saint Bonaventure. And
Yes.
I'm, as you got from my last podcast, I'm currently writing a book. I'm actually writing a book on a history of love, and it is based on an understanding of the Trinity that I took from Bonaventure, who wrote it like in 1280, and I've never heard anybody else say it. It is so simple. Gina, I can tell people, I can define, I can't define necessarily, but I can explain the love of the Trinity to anybody, the three-person love, in 5 minutes, and how it all came about. And it all came from Bonaventure. And I was not taught this in seminary. I had to read this all on my own later, and I said, "Oh my goodness, what is this?" And that's all Bonaventure was doing, was portraying Francis. He was the first minister of this Order of St. Francis, wasn't he? Wasn't he the first one or the second? He was the
Yeah,
biggest.
they like in the second, yeah, with Juniper, yeah. I've heard of him and I've heard of his teachings too, Father
Yeah.
Brother Saint Bonaventure. Not many people hear of that saint, but I'm aware
No,
of
not
he
a
was
lot of people. You got
Franciscan.
to be kind of Franciscan to do
That's
that.
right. And
Um,
I do love Franciscan because I'm a simple person. Not that I'm wearing a habit anymore, but my heart is simple. And I do follow Jesus to the best of my ability of what he asked of me today.
that's
So to
beautiful.
carry my cross. So,
And with that in mind, let's wrap up the show. And you wrote a book
okay.
about that. And you wrote a book that's titled "Shake the Dust Off Your Feet and Walk." Tell me about that book. What's
The,
going on in
the,
that book? I've left it in the show notes so everybody can get a copy.
Oh, I hope so. It's my memoir. It's my story. I've shared briefly here. It goes more details of what I experienced in the convent. It goes more details on falling in love with an alcoholic, and he ultimately died from the disease. So it goes and it goes in more details on how I came into the rooms of AA and how I'm sober today, and how I'm happy, joyous, and free today and how I never gave up on life. In hindsight, I wanted to give up on life, but my story tells you that I did not. And it's just, yeah, that's all. That's all about my life. It's just my
Well,
life spreading that
I can't
message of
wait.
hope and
Yeah,
strength.
I can't wait. I'm going to push it. I want I want our listeners to check it out. I've got the link on Amazon. They can check out the book and hopefully
Yeah.
they purchase it. Well, I'll tell you,
Amen.
Gina Economopoulos, thank you so much for
Thank
spending
you,
time with
Charlie.
me on the show today. You've been wonderful.
Yeah. Last thing, do you know the name Charlie means a free man?
I did not know that.
And I know the other day I heard you talk about freedom within free man. The meaning of Charlie
Oh,
is free
and
man.
freedom is my number one word. I believe,
Yeah.
that's what I love about America is I love
Yeah.
freedom. And
Yeah.
anything that crosses the lines of freedom really crosses my lines.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina. And I also want to thank everybody for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.